Do we have some X-Files music? Because he's got a theory.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Here is the Joel Klatt theory. I asked you about the committee.
Well, yeah, and I'm trying to lock down the actual criteria, because what Jeff Long tells us is not actually true, because it doesn't fit all the different spots, right? Where Ohio State is ranked doesn't fit where Baylor is ranked, because they essentially have the same resume. They haven't played anybody, and yet Ohio State is up there at number 3, and Baylor is dropped down. Oklahoma State gets a great win at home against TCU, who was 20-1 in their last 2 years and only jumps up to 8. Didn't make any sense. So I'm trying to figure out, well, what is the actual criteria? And I landed on a geographical and schematic criteria. And it's very clear to me. If you play east of the Mississippi, you're going to be looked on very favorably than if you're west of the Mississippi.
Okay, so you're saying the committee likes the Big Ten and the SEC.
Absolutely. When you look at the 10 teams that the Big Ten and SEC have ranked, 60% of them, 6 of 10, are ranked higher in the playoff rankings than they are in the AP poll.
Okay, interesting.
Yes.
So 6 of 10 teams, Big Ten and SEC, the committee thinks better than the AP poll.
That's right. Then the 61 or 2 voters in the AP poll. Remember, it's just 12 people,
okay.
So the margin.
Right. Now, but what is the committee doing with the Pac-12 and the Big 12?
This is where it gets interesting, because
X-Files music, here we go.
Say, 60% is just 60%. Well, of the 7 teams ranked in the Pac-12 and the Big 12, 0 are ranked higher in the playoff rankings than they are in the AP rankings.
Okay.
That's not a coincidence. That's a trend. That's a criteria.
So now here's what's interesting from Klatt, and it's very interesting. I think he makes a very good point. You're not kooky madookie on this. Your belief is look at who's on the committee.
That's right. All you have to do is look at who's on the committee and who's most influential on the committee. I said this last week. Barry Alvarez is very clearly the most influential person on the committee, and number 2 on that list is Tom Osborne, because schematics are starting to matter as well. If you play in a phone booth, if you play pro style of offense and you like to run the ball and stop the run, they love you.
That's what they coached.
They love you.
Osborne and Barry Alvarez love that.
They think that you pass the eye test, not these teams that are playing modern offense. So they're communicating right now with an old phone book and a rotary phone. And if you use Facebook, it ain't happening for you.
Okay, so what you're saying makes a lot of sense, that the old school guys who have leverage on the committee, it's almost like, certain people in Congress have leverage, right? Because they're in Congress for, it was, the guy in Massachusetts, Ted Kennedy, Tip O'Neill. If you're in Congress long enough, you have influence. You're saying Barry and Tom are sitting up there going, boys, those teams pass the eyeball test. Those flaky teams out west,
that's right.
They're no good.
I've got a number for you. And these are these are statistics, so you can't argue with me. I'm not trying to throw bias out there any direction. I just think that the committee is showing their cards.
Sure.
Right? They're trying to tell us it's one thing, but it's really another. They're like Kaiser Soze of Usual Suspects, It's like the greatest trick Kaiser Soze or the devil ever pulled is making people think he didn't exist.
Right.
The greatest trick that this committee is pulling is making people believe that these rankings don't matter and that the criteria that they're throwing out does matter, because it clearly doesn't. Right now, the schematics and the belief is that the SEC plays great defense. And while I would agree, Alabama played great defense against LSU. There's no question about that, stopping Leonard Fournette with just 7 in the box. I think that you have to use different metrics when you're looking at higher number of possessions in some conferences versus other conferences. Let me just throw this out to you, and this is 100% fact. Take from it what you will. In the Alabama-LSU game, there were 2.09 points per possession scored in the game overall. Okay? If you go to the TCU-Oklahoma State game that I was at, very impressive performance from Oklahoma State defensively, even though they gave up 600 yards. Guess how many points per possession were given up in the game as a whole? 2.05.
So what you're saying
it was actually a better game defensively than the SEC game, but no one wants to look at that per possession. All they want to do is look at totals, yards, and points, which are clearly not the metric you can use to view the Big 12 and the Pac 12 as opposed to the Big 10 and the SEC.